The night was thick with rain, and Sarah stumbled out of the car, her breath catching as she saw what no heart could bear. Her husband Michael walked with Anna, his arm brushing against hers like an intimate confession. Sarah's pulse roared in her ears as she whispered, "This can't be real." The streetlights painted everything in cruel clarity, and the world seemed to tilt beneath her. Michael laughed softly at something Anna said, and Sarah's soul cracked. Her best friend's smile, once comforting, now burned like a blade. The betrayal struck in silence, sharper than any scream. Sarah clutched her chest, whispering to herself, "I gave everything." Her shoes splashed through shallow puddles as she staggered, torn between rage and disbelief. The night, once alive with dreams, had turned into her prison of heartbreak. Sarah sat in the silence of her car, her breath shallow as the storm pounded against the windshield. Her mind replayed what she saw, but her heart refused to believe it. Michael's laughter with Anna echoed like a cruel song, and she pressed her palms against her ears. She whispered, "It's a lie. It has to be." Yet the truth had carved itself into her, sharp and undeniable. Memories of shared nights with Anna, the secrets they promised to keep safe, now felt poisoned. Sarah leaned back, staring at the ceiling, her voice breaking as she said, "How could you both?" The night stretched endlessly as Sarah walked home alone, her footsteps heavy with betrayal. Every echo on the empty street mocked her trust. She remembered Anna's words from just days ago. "You know I'd never hurt you." Now they rang hollow. Michael's promises of forever unraveled with each step. Her chest ached with every breath, her spirit torn between screaming and silence. She whispered into the dark, "Was I ever enough?" The rain had stopped, but the storm within her raged mercilessly. Sarah reached her living room and collapsed onto the couch, the silence louder than any storm. Family photos lined the walls, reminders of a life built on lies. She stared at the smiling faces of Michael and Anna beside her, framed memories now knives in her chest. She whispered, "You both sat here with me, laughed here with me, and all along." Her words faltered, tears flooding her cheeks. She buried her face in her hands, suffocated by the weight of betrayal. Morning broke with cruel indifference. The sunlight pierced through the curtains, warm and golden, yet to Sarah it felt like a spotlight on her brokenness. She sat at the dining table, her coffee untouched, her eyes empty. The world outside carried on, neighbors waved, children played, but her world had collapsed. She thought, "They will never know what I lost last night." Her hands trembled as she gripped the mug, and she whispered, "I don't know if I can survive this." Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the family portrait on the wall. The smiling faces of Michael and Anna haunted her, a cruel reminder of the lies behind the frame. She whispered, "I gave you everything." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were fixed with determination. She thought of the sacrifices she made, the dreams she buried, the love she poured into a life built on betrayal. The memories of laughter around the dinner table were now poisoned echoes. She pressed her hand against her chest as though holding her heart together. The silence of the room was heavy, but it carried her pain like a scream. Sarah moved through the kitchen, each step echoing with the weight of her broken trust. She remembered Michael's words, "You're everything I ever wanted." Now those words tasted bitter. She touched the counter where Anna had once chopped vegetables beside her, laughing as if sisterhood bound them. The knife gleamed under the light, and Sarah's reflection stared back at her with hollow eyes. She whispered, "How long were you lying to me?" The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage of deceit. In the quiet of her daughter's room, Sarah sat on the floor surrounded by scattered toys. Her hands trembled as she picked up a doll, memories of playing with Anna by her side rushing back. The bond they once shared was shattered, leaving nothing but sharp fragments. Sarah whispered, "You promised me loyalty." Her voice cracked, breaking the silence. She tucked the doll into the toy chest as if burying her trust along with it. The room smelled of innocence, but Sarah's soul felt poisoned. Later that day, Sarah sat with her brother Daniel, his worried eyes fixed on her trembling hands. Daniel asked softly. "What's wrong?" She shook her head, the words caught in her throat. She wanted to scream, to confess, but the betrayal felt too heavy to share. His concern only deepened her ache, and she whispered, "Nothing. I'll be fine." Daniel frowned, knowing her silence was a mask. Sarah's eyes glistened with tears, and she prayed he wouldn't push further. The weight of truth was hers alone to carry, for now. Night returned, cloaking the house in silence. Sarah sat at the dining table, her hands wrapped around a cold glass of water. The clock ticked louder than her heartbeat, each second mocking her shattered trust. She remembered Michael's vows at the altar, Anna's promises of lifelong friendship. Every word felt like poison now. She whispered into the empty room, "You broke me." Her shoulders shook, but her eyes held a flicker of resilience. She knew this storm was only the beginning. Sarah sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop casting a harsh light on her pale face. She scrolled through Michael's messages, each word piercing her like a knife. His promises to Anna mirrored the vows he once made to her. Her hands shook as she whispered, "You gave her the words that belonged to me." The conversations unfolded like poison, exposing stolen moments and whispered lies. Sarah's tears blurred the screen, but she forced herself to read, her pain deepening with every line. The morning sun filtered through thin curtains as Sarah sat motionless, the phone clutched in her hand. Michael's voice echoed from a recent voicemail, his laughter soft, intimate, and clearly meant for Anna. Her chest tightened as she pressed the phone to her ear. "You never laughed that way with me," she whispered bitterly. She slammed the phone down, her pulse racing. Every sound in the house felt foreign, like echoes of a stranger's life she no longer belonged to. Later that evening, Sarah stood by the dresser, pulling open the drawer Michael always kept locked. Inside, a folded letter peeked out from beneath neatly stacked shirts. Her pulse quickened as she unfolded it, recognizing Anna's handwriting instantly. The words were filled with longing, plans for a future together, mocking the life Sarah built with him. Her knees weakened, and she whispered, "You both planned this while I loved you." The betrayal wrapped around her like a noose, suffocating and merciless. That night, Sarah called her childhood friend Emily, her voice breaking as she tried to hold back tears. Emily listened quietly, her silence heavy with things unsaid. Sarah begged, "Please tell me you didn't know." Emily's hesitation cut deeper than any answer. The pause stretched, and finally Emily whispered, "I thought it would end. I didn't want to hurt you." Sarah's hand tightened on the phone, her trust unraveling even further. Even loyalty seemed fragile now, and betrayal had spread its roots wider than she imagined. Alone once more, Sarah stood at the bathroom sink, gripping its edges as though to anchor herself. Her reflection stared back, broken but unyielding. She whispered, "Was I blind, or did I choose not to see?" The mirror fogged with her trembling breath, the woman looking back at her almost unrecognizable. She touched her cheek, as though searching for the person she once was. The betrayal had stripped her bare, but in the ruins she felt the first sparks of defiance. Her pain would not consume her forever. The night was still when Sarah received a message from an unknown number. Her hands trembled as she opened it, finding a photo of Michael and Anna together at a hotel, their arms wrapped around each other. Her chest tightened as bile rose in her throat. She whispered, "Someone wants me to see this." The silence of the room pressed in as she clutched the phone, her mind spinning with questions. Who sent it? Why now? Betrayal was no longer hidden. It was being delivered straight to her, cruel and undeniable. Sarah's pulse thundered as she scrolled through more images, each one exposing secret meetings. She whispered, "It wasn't just a mistake, it was a life." Her heart broke further when she saw notes tucked between photos, scribbled in Anna's handwriting. Plans for trips, whispers of a future, words that were once hers alone. Sarah pressed her forehead against the cold wall, her tears dripping silently. The betrayal wasn't only real, it was deliberate, and it had been nurtured in shadows. Later, Sarah sat at her dining table surrounded by the evidence. Photos, letters, messages, all sprawled before her like weapons forged from broken promises. Her hands hovered above them, trembling with rage and grief. She whispered, "You built a world without me." The room felt suffocating, each shadow pressing closer. The truth she once feared was now undeniable. She stared at the ring on her finger, the symbol of her vows now mocking her, gleaming in the dim light, like a cruel reminder. Just as Sarah's rage threatened to consume her, the phone rang. The voice on the other end was one she hadn't heard in years, her estranged mother, Catherine. "I need to tell you the truth, sweetheart," she said softly. Sarah froze, her breath catching. Catherine continued, "Your father isn't the man you think he is. He left me for another woman, and I see his choices living through Michael." Sarah's blood ran cold. The betrayal was bigger than her marriage. It was a cycle, a curse carried through generations. Sarah sank into the chair, her mother's words echoing through her. Betrayal was no longer just Michael and Anna's sin, it was rooted deep in her bloodline. She whispered, "I was doomed to this." The pieces of her life twisted together into a cruel design she never chose. Her tears fell freely now, a mixture of grief for her marriage and sorrow, for her family's fractured past. The truth had been revealed, and it cut deeper than she ever imagined. Her story was no longer just hers, it was one of inherited scars. The night air was thick with silence as Sarah stood outside Anna's house. Her fists clenched, her heart pounding with a rhythm of fury and fear. She whispered to herself, "This ends tonight." Every step toward the door felt like crossing a battlefield she never chose. Memories of laughter with Anna and vows with Michael flashed in her mind like cruel ghosts. Her breath trembled, but her eyes burned with fire. The betrayal was no longer hidden, it was waiting inside, and she was ready to face it. The door opened, and Michael stood frozen, his eyes widening as he saw her. Sarah's voice cut through the night like glass. "Did you ever love me, or was it always her?" Michael stammered, his charm crumbling under her gaze. Behind him, Anna appeared, her lips parting in shock. The silence between the three of them was a storm, thick and violent. Sarah's tears glistened under the porch light, but her voice was steady, every word ablaze. She no longer trembled. She was ready to strike with truth. Michael reached for her, his words desperate. "Sarah, it's not what you think." She laughed bitterly, her voice sharp. "I've read your messages, Michael. I know every lie." Anna stepped forward, whispering, "I never meant to hurt you." Sarah's gaze snapped to her, cold as steel. "You didn't just hurt me, Anna. You destroyed everything." The air trembled with the weight of their betrayal, and Sarah stood tall, no longer broken but unflinchingly strong in her pain. Sarah stepped closer, her voice low but searing. "You thought I wouldn't find out. You thought I was blind." Michael lowered his gaze, his silence heavier than any confession. Anna's eyes brimmed with tears, but Sarah felt no pity. Her pain had hardened into armor. She whispered, "You both stole my life, but you will never steal my strength." In that moment, her heartbreak became a weapon, every word striking like thunder. The betrayal no longer silenced her, it gave her voice. The confrontation erupted like fire. Michael shouted, "You don't understand." Sarah's voice rose above his, unwavering. "I understand perfectly. You betrayed me." Anna sobbed, clutching her arms, but Sarah didn't flinch. Her chest heaved with the storm of her pain, yet her voice carried calm fury. She whispered one final time, "You can't break what you never deserved." The silence that followed was louder than their screams. Sarah turned away, her back straight, leaving them in the ruins of their lies. The night after the confrontation, Sarah sat alone in her bedroom. The silence was suffocating, but it was her silence now, not poisoned by lies. She whispered, "I survived." The betrayal still burned like fire in her chest, but there was also a strange emptiness, a hollow space where love used to live. She pulled the ring from her finger and placed it on the nightstand, her hand trembling. The metal glinted under the lamp, no longer a promise but a reminder of what was lost. The following morning, Sarah stood by the kitchen window, watching the world move on. Neighbors waved, children laughed on bicycles. The sun shone brightly, but inside her the world still felt shattered. She whispered, "No one knows what I carry." Her reflection in the glass showed a woman broken, but still standing. She pressed her hand against the window, feeling the warmth of sunlight on her skin, realizing she was still alive, even in her ruins. Later, Sarah sat across from Daniel at a quiet cafe. He reached for her hand, his voice steady. "You don't have to go through this alone." Her eyes glistened, but she shook her head gently. "I need to learn how to stand on my own." His grip tightened, a silent promise of support. She smiled faintly for the first time in days, fragile but real. The weight of betrayal still crushed her, yet Daniel's presence reminded her that some bonds hadn't been broken. That evening, Sarah walked through the park, the air cool against her skin. She watched families laugh together, couples strolling hand in hand, the life she once thought was hers. Her chest ached, but she whispered, "This pain will not define me." Leaves rustled above, the wind carrying away fragments of her sorrow. She breathed deeply, grounding herself in the moment. For the first time, she felt the faint pulse of strength beneath the wreckage of her heart. Back at home, Sarah sat at her desk with a blank journal open before her. She gripped the pen tightly, her hand trembling as she wrote the first words. "This is not the end of me." Tears dotted the page, but she didn't stop. Each word was a step toward reclaiming herself, a small defiance against the shadows of betrayal. She whispered, "I will rise." Her heart was still broken, but now it carried a spark of hope, faint but unyielding. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, as Sarah sat in the living room staring at her phone. She hovered over the contact list, her thumb trembling above Emily's name. She whispered, "I just need one person to hear me." The silence swallowed her plea, leaving only the ticking clock on the wall. She pressed the call button, her heart pounding with fragile hope. But the line rang endlessly, each unanswered tone sinking her deeper into the truth she feared most, that she was truly alone. Sarah pulled the phone away, the silence of the unanswered call cutting through her chest. She whispered, "Not even you." She set the phone on the table, the sound echoing in the stillness. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against her temples, memories flashing of laughter with Anna, promises from Michael, comfort from Emily. Every bond she trusted had unraveled. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks, not with rage now, but with a bone-deep emptiness that left her hollow. She stood by the window, staring into the night. The street outside carried on with indifference, neighbors' homes glowing with warmth, laughter muffled through the glass. Her reflection stared back, hollow-eyed, reminding her of the woman she had become. She whispered, "I've been left with shadows." The world outside sparkled with life, yet she felt like a ghost within her own skin. The glass fogged slightly with her breath, the darkness pressing closer as she leaned her forehead against the window. She moved back to the couch, her body heavy with exhaustion. Picking up her journal, she read the words she had written before. "This is not the end of me." But tonight, they felt distant, belonging to another version of herself. She whispered, "Maybe I was wrong." The silence of the room seemed to nod in agreement, as though mocking her. She closed the journal slowly, pressing it to her chest. The weight of her loneliness sank deeper, wrapping her in a suffocating embrace she couldn't escape. The night dragged on as Sarah sat in silence, her gaze fixed on the darkness beyond the window. The truth finally settled over her like a shroud. Every promise, every friendship, every vow had crumbled. She whispered, "I've been alone all along." The words echoed in the empty room, final and irrevocable. The phone lay dark, the journal shut, the silence absolute. Sarah closed her eyes, her face streaked with tears, and the story of her heart ended not with screams, but with a haunting stillness that would never leave her.